All right, you guys are in for a real special treat. Airbnb is something that everyone's talking about, but there's not very many people I actually know that are doing it. And it's something that can be very, very profitable. And I still feel like Airbnb it's not ground level, but it's just a little bit above ground level. So you guys are in for some real good information. That if you guys own rental properties now, it's a great idea to possibly do Airbnb. For example, I met a guy a couple years ago, and he was actually renting a place in Bucktown. And he had a house that he lived in the suburbs, but he worked downtown in Chicago, downtown Chicago. So he'd stay in this house from Monday through Thursday and rent it out, okay? He was renting it from another person. Then on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, he would Airbnb the same place that he was renting. And he was actually making money over what he was paying in rent. So not only was he living there for free by renting a place, he was actually making money. And it was a really nice place. So that kind of was my first introduction to Airbnb. And as investors, we have a lot more opportunity because obviously we're not going to live in the units. Also, I know I just talked to Joey B in the back there. He was telling me he's even rented out some of his bedrooms, correct? Just to figure out the process and get it started. So that's another opportunity. How many people here have a room in their house that they're not currently doing anything with? Okay, that's possible income opportunity that you don't have to take a big risk and buy a property. You can figure out the process, start small, and then start scaling from there. And Joey, with the people that you're renting out, what is it in comparison to what your mortgage payment is?
The way I look at it is I've been doing it since the middle, and this is Monica Nowicki, she's my partner. She handles all she handles everything.
The coordination, yep.
But we set it up for short term and long term. Neither her nor I had any training in this stuff, right? And right now we're making about $1,200 a month on long-term tenants. I got how much? Yeah, we're making $1,200. I got two ladies from Shanghai, a mother and daughter from Shanghai, and they came July 16th to August 31st, but they renewed it. So I'm averaging like $1,200, $1,250, something like that over the long-term period. But we had between June and July, we had short-term rentals. We had, I think, 5 short-term rentals. We made $21.57. And
while you're living there.
While I'm living there. So
nice.
What I'm doing is I am covering my taxes, my insurance, my gas, my electricity, and my water. So it covers my occupancy costs. So I'm looking at this, and Mr. Bedrooms, I never use this, something like friends get drunk and stay over the house. You know?
Where do they stay now?
They got the basement and they got the couch.
Okay. But that's an awesome example. You guys don't have to go out there, like just like what Joey did, and he's got big plans. I was talking to him about what else he's going to be doing with it. But that's how you started, was with your own property that you already own, and you test it there, and then you scale it from there. So this is something very practical that everyone in this room can actually implement. And so I'm really excited.
And Josh, what I would say is, if people want to know about it, you talk to Monica. And then I've got a new friend in this guy Syed over here. Yeah. He's got 9. And he's actually, we got to show him his properties and start doing it. This Airbnb isn't a competitive thing.
Sure.
Where, I'm not going to tell this guy, I'm not going to do this and that. He's given me his handyman. He's showing me how to buy. I want to put another TV in the bigger of the 2 bedrooms. And he said, Joey, this is how you do it. This is how you. He gave me the links to buy it. gave me this, he's giving me the handyman to help me get, I mean, I got a handyman to do it, but he's got this thing put together.
Awesome.
The only thing he scared me, I went to see he's got a maid, his own maid service. They iron the sheets. I'm over there, holy cow, man, this guy's taking it a great hire.
Wow. He's like a Four Seasons Airbnb. I'll have to check out one of his units. All right, so yeah, absolutely. You guys can, it doesn't have to be Four Seasons, of course. You could start, like I said, just with that spare bedroom that you don't even have the vent on in your room because you're trying to conserve energy. And then Joey said something too that was pretty impactful. How many people think, all right, let's just go through some different examples. How many people think your car that you drive, your nice car that you make a monthly payment on every month, is that an asset or liability? Liability. Asset, if you're using it to, depending on what you're doing with it, could possibly be an asset. But most of the time it's a liability. Your house, is that an asset or a liability? Liability, absolutely. With Airbnb, if you properly set it up, you can now turn a house into an asset. Your spouse, is that an asset or a liability? No, I won't go there. So I'm not married.
She has a job.
I just opened a can of worms. But anyways, without further ado, they're not going to come up unless you guys give them a lot of energy. So we're going to have to give them a lot of energy. I'm going to introduce Mr. Zach and Derek Light.
Thank you, everybody, for welcoming us. Josh does a good job here with the meetup, and I've seen a lot of deals. Can everybody hear me? I've seen a lot of people connect here and do deals, so you're in the right place. Derek and I partnered up this year, earlier this year, and we were doing business prior, but we're going to tell our story about how we started Crash Chicago. I'll start with how I got into the business. I'll let Derek tell his story, and then we'll tell you a little bit about the operation and show you what some of the financials look like, and open it up for questions. We've got MK to help us, as she knows all the ins and outs as well. So I'm actually a wholesaler by trade, and I still wholesale deals on a regular basis. I enjoy being in people's living rooms and negotiating deals and sending them over to developers. So I partnered up with a guy who was doing some good volume, and meanwhile he was actually Airbnb-ing his extra bedroom in the 2-bedroom apartment he was renting in the West Loop, and he's paying his rent payment every month. And so he was living rent-free, and we were doing deals together, and my profits were going to pay for my mortgage, and his were paying for the next deal he did, or the wherever he wanted to invest it on the side. So my wife and I started looking at opportunities to place some of our profits in something a little better, and we really liked Airbnb. So we got the townhouse next to ours, put it on Airbnb, and it did really well. It did like $4,000, $5,000 a month, a lot of months, and market rents were like $1,600. So that really was a big ticket for me. I mean, that kind of got me going in the rental game, like no other rental would have. You can't go buy even a building on the south side and get returns like that. So I got the second townhouse going in that complex, and we bought a building earlier this year and are opening another one. We actually have our first guest this weekend there. And along the way, I partnered up with Derek, and him and his spouse have 7 properties now. So their niche is a little bit different than mine, but we were doing brokerage work and wholesaling work together, and we just thought it made sense to leverage resources, cleaning ladies, just manage our guests, bounce leads off of each other. I actually hosted a guest this week that Derek hosted last week, and it's those types of things happen all the time because we have openings that we can bounce off of each other and just help each other make a little more money. So You want to tell a little bit about how you got into business? Again, to your point in the back, it's not competitive. It's a business. It's a family, and you can, we've found that we've always had more guests than we know what to do with. So my name's Derek Light. A little bit about my background. I was with Coldwell Banker for 10 years. I ran their websites for the Midwest, and then I did some consulting for some real estate tech startups, and then a couple years ago, my partner Lori and I, we owned a 5,000 square foot Georgian in Bronzeville with a coach house, a 3-bedroom coach house, and we had 2 very bad tenants in a row, and we were thinking, well, we're going to sell the property. We knew our neighbor across the street, Mel Monroe. He runs a bed and breakfast, and he asked us, well, hey, can I rent out some of your rooms? And we thought, well, and I said, well, why don't we just put ours on Airbnb, and maybe we'll make enough to make our mortgage and at least save the house. So we put it up in mid-September. We had all the 2 nights in October booked for the 5,000 square foot property. At anywhere from $400 to $500 a night. And so that just took off. We cycled all of our regular rentals out of our 1-bedrooms. Then the following summer, we bought a townhouse at 38th in Indiana, and we like Bronzeville because a little bit more than half of our guests are McCormick visitors that are coming in for conventions or sales teams. So we bought that property, and then this summer we bought a property at Oakwood and King Drive, which is right by the new Mariano's. The coach house was already done. The coach house itself is 3 bedrooms, 3 baths, 2,700 square feet. We rented that a week after we bought it, and it's been rented all summer. And last month it's starting to slow down a little bit. And we're rehabbing the front house. The front house is 8 bedrooms, 6 full baths, 2 half baths. It's one of 4 remaining Daniel Burnham single family homes. And so that'll be done at the end of this month. We have our first guest there for NAR, November 2nd. And so that will rent from anywhere from $600 during the week to $1,200 a night for the weekends and the summers. We've already had a lot of interest for next summer. We get a lot of people that are architecture geeks, and they want to come. We also get a lot of families and a lot of people meeting in Chicago or want to do weddings there or something like that. So it's kind of, it really runs gamut. So we have 1 bedrooms where we get last minute bookings and backpackers, and then up to larger properties for sales teams and for family gatherings. So you see his niche is mansions, and I choose to just buy apartments and townhouses. But what he's doing is working. There's nobody else doing it, and they're killing it. And we found that everybody's got their own risk tolerance, and we're going to talk a little bit about how we got to identify our property still, how you can do this, and how some people can get into business quickly. Are there any landlords in the room? Can you raise your hand? So of you guys that aren't raising your hand, is there anybody that wants to be a landlord? So all you have to do is convince the people that raise their hand first to lease to you and allow you to sublease it, and then you can be an Airbnb host. So there's tricks of that trade in different cities with different legislature, but we actually started one of our townhouses off with a lease option that allowed for subleasing and sampled Airbnb that way, and it works. So, do you have a question back there? Or?
I did have a question. It's like I heard that let's say I rent your apartment, and I convert that to Airbnb. What are the clauses you have to have in your contract will allow you to do that?
So I'm not an attorney. I would advise you to consult an attorney. But A lease is a contract, right? So, talk to your attorney and have them add the clause that you need. And I know ours was just something that allowed subleasing or transient rentals.
I would be very open about what you're doing.
Yeah,
I would just come out and say, I'm renting. I want to rent from you so I can put it on Airbnb.
One thing I do know is that anybody that's getting in trouble for that kind of stuff, they're getting in trouble because they're not getting permission.
Right.
Or they're in a building with an association that doesn't allow it. So there's lots of in and outs, but if you're talking to, you get legal counsel, then you can, there's things like that you can do.
So you have to have the right to sublet is one of them.
Yeah, and you really need to have your landlord's buy-in. You got to have their support. They got to believe in what you're doing, and frankly, you can be a better tenant that way than some tenants that they might get. So, just be transparent in any business that you do. I tell people I'm teaching how to wholesale, be transparent, and your deals won't fall apart. So it's across all types of real estate that I've been involved in. Lying never goes very far. So, go ahead.
The standard Chicago Association of Realtors lease has 2 line items in it now. That says you can rent it or you can't with an Airbnb.
I did see that. So they're already putting it in the car contracts. So anyway, I'm going to jump into identifying. We still identify properties just like you're looking at an acquisition for an investment property. We look at the finances different. We look at comps for the neighborhoods we're in, things like walking score and the setup costs that we're going to accrue going into the project. So your financials are going to look different when you're looking for deals to do this with. The size of the unit dictates how much it's going to cost to furnish and how long it's going to take to clean. So it's going to drive your operating costs, and you're going to have to analyze deals different in this business. We do find that there's people doing this all over Chicago in rough neighborhoods and good neighborhoods. So you're really just weighing pros and cons, but you got to know what you're doing, and you can learn it as you go. Fortunately, in this business, the profit margins are a little better if it works. So some of the things we look at: walking score in some of your neighborhoods.
Well, right. So we're in Bronzeville, and we get a lot of people that we try to be as transparent as we can. And again, transparency. We try to be as transparent as we can in letting people know where we are. And every once in a while, we get somebody from a cornfield that comes to Bronzeville and they want to leave. They're afraid. And that will happen. But Bronzeville is also very close to McCormick, and it's underserved as far as hotels go. So, so you just, again, when you're looking at a property, you want to be as transparent with your potential guest as you can be.
Yeah, so, and I guess these are just some of the things you have to look at. These are all trade-offs that you're weighing just like you would any acquisition or any rehab project. They're going to dictate the value of your property regardless of what you do. And a lot of them can add value to an Airbnb, but we find, we've got a couple off of Kedzie and Bloomington Trail, which is pretty far from any train, but it's one of the first neighborhoods that has free parking without permits required on the northwest side. So we find that we get a lot of people that have a couple of cars that want to stay there. So there's trade-offs. We just look at, is this a place that people will want to be? Your competition is the hotel industry, and if you can undercut them in price, sometimes you can cut them by like a quarter and still make a boatload of money. Then your business is going to look good. And one thing we do to figure that out is look at comps. So I'll talk about that a little bit here. I'll let you talk about financing because you guys are.
Yeah. So what we do, and we've done this for our last 2 projects. We've gotten hard money to purchase the property and to rehab it. The first one we did, it was the townhouse was was 150, and we got another 50 on top of that for the rehab. This latest project, it was 425, and we got another 400 to do the rehab. It's pretty much a full gut rehab. But then what you have to do, you're going to put anywhere from 10 to 20% into it to start with, but you're always going to want to flip out of it into long-term debt because you don't want to pay that juice, right? So you need to make sure that your ARV is going to give you the cushion to flip it into long-term debt. The challenges of it, especially with Airbnb right now, we had somebody that pretty much took a chance on us with the townhouse, and we were again honest about what we were doing, and they let us do it, and that was obviously a smaller deal. But then I think we're going to end up going with the same person for a larger project because we've proven it can work. And I can tell you that for a lot of companies are really looking at Airbnb right now and seeing it as a viable market, and people that are buying units for Airbnb as real customers. And so they still look at it kind of crooked, but it's getting a lot better, especially when we've been doing this for 2 years and we can show our numbers for all of our properties, and so that's getting better. But again, you want to be upfront with if you're doing that, you want to be upfront with what you're doing because you don't want to be stuck with a hard money loan long term.
Do you have to have a special insurance if you do Airbnb?
Yeah, so what we do, it's not specifically short-term rental insurance, but we do have an umbrella policy for all of our units, and that just covers people slipping on steps, and we have it's just more. You don't really need anything special. There's really nothing special for it. You have your regular renter's insurance, and then you do an umbrella policy for people falling or whatever. But I've never had to use my insurance in 2 years.
We're going to do questions at the end because I'm going to have a panel, just so.
So just to clarify, I've used conventional financing to do my acquisitions. It sounds like I'm asking this for everybody here. Have you guys found a conventional financier to refinance your hard money loan?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so people are doing it. Got to talk to Derek to find out who. But so we're starting to see, like, if you pay attention to Facebook, we're starting to see like these startups that are funding just Airbnb projects. So they're popping up. It's not big yet, I don't think. I haven't used any. If anybody has, I'd love to hear your story. But you start to see, $100,000 line of credit available for Airbnb only. So anyway, I'm going to jump into a little bit about the operations real quick. I know it's hot in here, so we'll try to get through these. Furnishing a unit is a big upfront cost that you have to account for, whether you're the tenant or the landlord, or however you're getting into this business when you're analyzing whether or not the deal you're looking at makes sense. You can talk to management companies or talk to furnishing companies to help figure out what they would charge, but you're gonna learn the most and save the most money if you do it yourself. We've kind of gotten down a formula for all of our units, but we still find ways to save money every time. Like we're buying furniture in creative ways. Going to furniture auctions. I know Derek and Lori have a basement full of furniture they bought at auctions. Estate sales are great, and that's also a great place to find deals for real estate transactions. We shop on Wayfair quite a bit. OfferUp. Facebook has a merchant page now. Craigslist. You can do all of it. All of it takes time, and you got to account for the time that you're putting in if you're going to set up the unit, because time is money, and we all know that time is the most valuable resource at this point. So, anything to add?
The auctions are amazing. We have 3 or 4 we go to, and you can generally get things for a lot less because you're looking for, you're setting it up a little bit different where it's not.
Speak into the mic, please.
Can you hear me now? Or no? You're setting it up a little bit different where it's not, you're not living there. You're setting it up like a hotel. Like, so for instance, in all of our properties, there's a trunk on the end of every bed. Why? Because people live out of their suitcases. So they come in, they set their trunk on the end they set their suitcase on the trunk. So I look for trunks. And then you want for that same reason you want low dressers so people can set their things on them. And so there's a lot of little things to think about, and again, you want to do it as cheap as you can because you want it to look nice, but also know it's going to get beat up, and it needs to be it's more functional.
So, I mean, that all ties back to this is a customer service business. This isn't just your typical real estate rental property. You want your rental properties to look good so you get the best tenants, but in this case, you're worried about reviews. And what Derek said, people live out of their suitcases. Those little details, and then paying attention to those details and tailoring your business to those things dictate whether or not you're going to get good reviews and whether or not you're going to put the right things in your unit. And at the end of the day, those reviews dictate whether or not the next guest comes and pays the premium that you're asking for. So you have to pay attention to every little detail. It's something I learned from my wife, who's sitting in the back, and she actually runs the business, and I just talk about it. But even when you're cleaning your unit, you have to make sure that the beds are made the right way, and the towels are hung the right way, and you don't have hair on the floor in the bathroom, because that's going to gross some people out and scare them off, or they're going to post a bad review on your page and it's going to scare off your next guest. So that aspect of this business to me is the biggest difference between Airbnb and any other type of real estate investing, because your business is never gonna rely on reviews if you're just a regular landlord. Maybe a little bit, but it's not gonna dictate what the rate you're charging tomorrow night, because this is a live process that people are paying attention to and using on a daily basis, and it's just very in your face. So you speak to the
Well, the only thing to add to that real quick is that a lot of people are afraid that if they do daily rentals, their properties are going to get trashed, and it's the exact opposite. They stay pristine because you have to. Somebody's in there every day. Somebody's cleaning it 2 or 3 times a week, and then anything that pops up, you're going to have a different guest that's going to tell you. Whereas if you have a traditional renter, they may just live with it. They may live with a leak. They may not care. They may let it go. Where if you're in there all the time, you have cleaning people in there all the time, your property is much better kept than it is with traditional renters. That's been my experience.
And you guys have houses that I know that get bigger groups than ours and probably have more parties at them, and you still.
Oh yeah, for sure.
There's
We've had a few bad guests, but by and large, people are great. They want to have a party. They tell you they're going to have a party, and a lot of times we get invited, and that's fun. I've been to 3 weddings at their house, but it's most people are great, and so I wouldn't, if you're worried about it if you'd be worried about Airbnb from an upkeep aspect, I would not be. It's a lot better than just having a regular renter.
people leave extra beer in the fridge, so you might get some nice leftovers. So I kind of just broke this down from a time commitment standpoint so that some people can understand what goes into this business. And this is probably a gross underestimate in some ways. And I didn't include a couple of things, but I wanted to kind of paint a big picture of, how much time is going to go into this if I convert the apartment I'm living in to an Airbnb? And you know, there's some people that are trying to get into real estate investing. That would be a great way to start and get a fast, you know, income stream started. So if you were to go out and stage your unit, it's going to take some time. You're going to have to shop for furniture. You're going to have to put it in the unit, make sure that you have backup linen sets for your next guest. You have, you know, all the ins and outs in the kitchens, things like that. You need to take professional photos. This is, again, it's all about marketing. It's all about the next guest and the reviews you get, and you do not want to use iPhone photos. This is probably more important in this business than in your MLS listings when you flip a house.
It's the exact same thing. Just if you're selling a house, you call VHT or you call whoever your photographer is. You do the exact same thing. It's $120. Do it. You'll make that 10 times over.
And actually, Airbnb offers a service to do it for you now, so you don't even have to hire VHT. We still do hire VHT because we just like the quality, and like $150 or $200 is worthwhile for us. It's paid back, in no time. So anyway, so moving on, you need to spend some time marketing, setting up your. We use Airbnb and other websites as well. We started Crash Chicago so that we have our own platform, but everything integrates together now. So if you are on HomeAway, you got to set up a profile on HomeAway, but you can actually tie it to your Airbnb profile, and your schedules will sync together. It just takes a little time to set all those sites up, and then you have things you have to do every week, just as a manager. If you're going to manage your own unit, you're gonna start paying attention to guests, and we'll talk about that a little more, but. You want to screen them. You don't want to just, let anybody come into your unit. There's a couple tricks to that. You do want to check guests in if you can. We let some guests just type in the electric code on the door and come, but we feel like it's always a better experience, and we get better reviews, and our guests leave our unit in better shape if we go say hi to them and talk to them. Make sure that their stay is going well, or have somebody do it for you. So just managing guests, taking their messages, fielding questions and things like that all takes time. Cleaning is something that you shouldn't do yourself, in my opinion. We've all, as Airbnb hosts, landlords, we've done it, and I know other people do it better than me, so that's part of why I say you shouldn't do it yourself, but it does take time every week. One unit's going to take, if you have to clean it twice, it's going to take at least 8 hours, and that's a big time commitment. You should outsource it right away, but another thing that takes time, and the one thing I didn't add on here is like with staging units, if you're buying on Wayfair or at IKEA, you got to assemble that furniture, so things like that take a lot more time. So I mentioned that at the beginning. We didn't include everything on here, but this is something that you should, if you're going to rent out your spare room or your apartment, this is a good ballpark for how much time you're going to spend on a weekly basis and up front. So we used one of our townhouses kind of as a financial summary, case study, and it's actually 3 bedrooms, 2.5 bathrooms. The nice thing about Airbnb is guests do book in advance, so you can see projections. At this point in the year, we have a pretty good idea of what we're going to close out 2017 with. We don't know what we're going to make next August, but we're starting to get bookings, and we have an idea that our mortgage payment's covered already. But I broke this down in a way that you could see what we're making now versus what I would have made if I just rented it to a fair market tenant. So I want to say I used something like $1,600 a month for the monthly rental rate if it was a fair market rental. Somebody might have to work my math backwards to verify that, but I was trying to be kind of conservative there and include expenses. Your expenses do go up operating an Airbnb. In addition, your upfront, I put a furnishing and setup costs in there. Those are approximately my actuals. That's something that I accounted for in the first year. I don't have to do that every year, but next year I'm going to have to replace some furniture, so I'm going to have a much higher capital expenditure than I would if I was just taking market renters. So you have to, there's some different variables. At the end of the day, we are experiencing more than double rental rates. I know that varies everywhere and with different size units, and there's people renting out 1-bedrooms that are doing well. There's people doing mansions, so you have to pay attention to where you're at. But it's working for a lot of people. I've actually talked to people who are quadrupling. I don't have my own case study that's that great, but one of these days I will.
Well, that's why we're doing larger units. Our 1-bedrooms do about 1.5 times what we would do in regular rental. But it's our big properties that really are home runs. Just because there are not that many, there are not that many places in Chicago that you can come rent for a weekend that sleep 20 people. And so people are willing to pay for it. In fact, this year, we will not have one weekend that wasn't booked. It's already booked every weekend for the rest of the year, and it's been booked. And it's, it's just because we're offering something unique. So, it's, so it does depend on the size of the property.
So people usually ask about this, so I just threw it in here. Airbnb is really the biggest player in this market, but there's other sites, there's actually a ton more, that you can find tenants through. All of them take time. You have to set up a profile and manage that profile, and so you kind of have to pick your poison and decide where you want to invest your time. I know a lot of people who just use Airbnb to find tenants in this business. I know that we use Airbnb and VRBO, and HomeAway is now, I think, completely part of VRBO.
Oh yeah, VRBO is more the back end of HomeAway.
So we use a couple sites. I don't use most of these. I've heard of great results from them, but well, some people might own the property somewhere else.
So for that Airbnb, we get for our 1-bedrooms and for the townhouse, which is a little bit smaller property, we get most of our bookings through Airbnb. For the larger properties, they come through VRBO. They tend to skew older, more affluent, and can afford the higher rents that we're charging. And there are people that are looking for that. They're business people. They're parents or grandparents looking for a family reunion, or somebody putting a wedding together. So there's just more money in it. But for the Georgian, the 6 bedrooms, 80% of our revenue comes through HomeAway.
So can you explain the $349 to $999 price?
Yeah. So the websites have different ways of charging you as the landlord and charging your tenants. So HomeAway actually has an offer, and its VRBOs is actually the same now. They have an option to just pay an annual fee rather than paying per booking as the landlord. You get the option, and they say that you're going to save a lot of money if you just pay up front for the annual subscription. But if you're going to get all your bookings through Airbnb anyway, and you're just going to fill some gaps with your backup VRBO account, then you do need to weigh those options. That's something that we've kind of learned as we go. But the guests also generally pay a fee to the websites. So it's something you want to be kind of aware of, because your guests are going to start asking you about it. And they're going to want to know, the rate that they see is going to be very different than what you have in the system, because they're going to pay taxes, they're going to pay the booking fee for the website on their end. If you have a cleaning fee set into the website, which we do use cleaning fees, some people don't, but you have the option to implement a cleaning fee per stay that guests have to pay for, and it becomes a kind of a markup, because if they see that you charge 150 bucks a night and then they go to book, it bumps it up 100 bucks, then it can scare some people away. We choose to, because we can house 8 people in a unit, and our experience is that, you know, a group of 8 isn't going to get scared off by a $100 fee. But if you have a 1-bedroom unit, or you're just hosting one guest at a time, then think about that. I do know that there's a lot of managers and you know, other Airbnb hosts that don't charge cleaning fees at all.
So the 349 is literally per booking, so if you book it for a weekend, you gotta pay them,
No, that's the annual fee,
as well as the.
or you could pay a per booking fee. Do you know what the percent is right now if you do it that option?
It almost always makes sense to do it annually. I mean, you don't have to book that much to the site for it to hit. It's like 9% or 10% per booking. It's pretty high. Yeah.
You guys address deposit, because I have Airbnb here in the western suburbs and also in southwest Michigan. And there was a night I wanted to go home, but I didn't have a place to stay because my place is booked up. So I was looking around to see the other, you know, availabilities, and I noticed that a lot of the other Airbnbers had huge deposits.
Yeah, so again, there's options. You set up a profile on all these sites, and it takes time to set up a profile, it takes time to manage it, but you're gonna have at least 1 or 2 just to be in this game. So when you go set up that profile, the website gives you the option to dictate how you want to charge people. Not only a nightly rate, you can charge people a weekend rate that's different. You can charge people a cleaning fee. You can charge people a pet deposit. You can charge people a damage deposit. You can charge people an insurance policy. So you get to dictate all these things, and it'll explain to you how to do it when you're reading it. Everything's going to have a trade-off, because if somebody charges $1,500 a night for a damage deposit, they're scaring away a lot of their guests, right? But maybe they have a really nice house that can host a lot of people, and that's you know, they only want to host for big wedding groups on the weekend or something. So they know that those groups will put it down and they'll get it back and they'll take care of the house because they got a lot of money on the line.
Now I know when my place stays busy because I don't have that kind of deposit.
Yeah, so you know, maybe play with it too. That's something we've done a lot of.
Can you repeat her question so we can hear what?
Yeah, she just asked about damage deposits. She was looking at other units to stay in, and she saw that some had really high damage deposits, and it scared her off in choosing to stay there. And she's a Airbnb host as well, and she doesn't have one, so she was trying to figure out why it makes sense to implement them or not. And we're actually tying up pretty soon, so we'll jump into more questions in a minute. We are going to kind of dabble with regulations. Chicago did implement an ordinance. There are rules that you have to follow. I can't go over the whole ordinance. We'll try to answer some questions about it, but there's different ways you can register a unit, and you need to be aware of what type of unit you own. And the biggest thing is you want to be in a place where you don't have like an association that outlawed Airbnb in their building or blacklisted it. You want to be aware of kind of what's going on with Airbnb in your neighborhood, and we'll answer some questions. MK's here to help us. There's a lot of legislature, there's a ton of things changing, and every city's different. So just kind of start looking at that if you want to get into this. We don't let it scare us off because we're making great money, and we know we're going to figure out how to work around, you know, the Airbnb rules in an area. You know, at some point, could that be a game changer? Yeah, they could come in and say that we can't do it anymore. But we'll probably start looking for another way to do a different type of transient rental, you know, find some travel nurses to host or something. So we'll jump into that in the question and answer a little bit more. Unless you,
Yeah, so for pricing, real quick, typically what you want to do long term is more expensive. As your dates get closer, what I do, I look at 2 months out, I drop the price a little bit, and 1 month out, I drop the price, more. And then you also have to understand that the more you drop your price, the more you may not get the people you want staying in your property. And so, especially for our larger ones, I would like to, if I knew everybody was going to be a good actor, I would rather have somebody staying in there for $150 a night than not. But what happens is if you drop it down that low, you get people that rent it solely for the purpose of having a giant party. They're going to trash it. It's not worth it. So you have to think about what kind of guests you're getting. For our 1 bedrooms, it's really not an issue. I can really play with the pricing on those. But you want to think about it like any other property. You want to do a CMA on it. You want to check out what else is going on. I use AirDNA. It's a fee service, but they analyze all the data for Chicago, and it's a great tool to know where to go and what pricing to use. And then for seasonal, so for Lollapalooza, we bumped our prices to double, and they were still booked because people will pay it because they're coming for a specific purpose. We did it for NAR. We do it for certain events. It's something you need to look out for, so you can price. Where you should be. You don't want to leave money on the table.
And you can really watch the hotels and kind of pay attention to what they're doing with prices, or what we do when we want to figure out if a unit makes sense to Airbnb is we just look at other units in that neighborhood, just like you do comps when you're analyzing a deal. Look at their calendar, look at their pricing. If their calendar's full and their pricing is promising, and it's, I want to make $5,000 a month in that neighborhood, and that person's already charging $250 a night, and they're booked up for the next few months, then I've got a comp right there. The only downside to that, and that's why we cross-check it with AirDNA. You can't look at old stuff in Airbnb. You can see what people are paying for in the next couple months in their calendars, but you can't see how long that group has been booked. AirDNA, on the flip side, tracks that data and keeps it all in a database and spits it out. We like to cross-check it and make sure that we know that the information we're seeing looks accurate on Airbnb's website and it's live. So you can really analyze deals that way. You can dictate your pricing that way. That's about it. So
I'm going to have just a panel, Saeed and MK, if you guys want to come up. Grab a couple of chairs there. Please give them a round of applause. So, MK, why don't you tell a little bit about yourself so that way people, if you haven't met MK, make sure to introduce yourself. She's pretty cool.
Thank you. I'm an attorney, and I do mostly real estate work, but prior to going solo in January, I was the lobbyist for Illinois for Airbnb. So a lot of the questions you guys actually have, I can answer them now, what the intent is. So the ordinance that currently exists, Airbnb, in my past life I was a prosecutor and a lobbyist to begin with for the last 5 years, including the housing committee of the House of Representatives. So I've been doing this stuff for a while, writing the laws, regulating the laws and being a part of that. Airbnb brought me on board for 6 months to help them get the legislation through, to create a tool to kind of regulate the safety and everything for Chicago. So just hoping to be a resource, especially to these guys who are actively doing it and to give you the real nuts and bolts of what's happening out there. But that's it. Thanks.
And Saeed.
Yeah, so my name is Syed. So first of all, I want to back up everything these guys said. They were spot on with almost everything that I heard from you guys, so good job on that. Just to give you a little background, I bought my first multifamily in 2016. It was 4 units and a basement. My basement, maybe not a non-conforming unit, I don't want to talk about that, but I would maybe make $800 rent on it. it would be an interesting tenant, maybe not the best tenant. So I listened to a podcast on Bigger Pockets. Somebody was killing it with Airbnb. So I was like, what the heck, let's try it. I told my wife she was on maternity leave for her to do something at home. So we started it. So we started in February. In February, we met our rent. Then March, it doubled. Then April, it tripled. So I was getting between 2 to 3 times my rent from Airbnb. So that made me change all my units in my building into Airbnb. My sister had a property in Logan Square. We changed all her units to Airbnb. And then I started looking for clients to do my service for. Since I already have the systems in place, the communication, the cleaning ladies, being able to design a stage, knowing what to buy for a vacant unit, I tried presenting this to my clients. So a lot of you guys might know Bree. So I'm doing Airbnb in Bree's home. And then recently I just got another client. He has like a huge building in Uptown, and I'm doing Airbnb in 2 of his units. They finished today. So as of right now, I have 9 units. I told my full-time job that I'm going to do this full-time now. Then they counter offered me saying, can you stay part-time with benefits? I said, sure. So it's been going great. My company is Hostly, Chicago. So what I do is I do Airbnb services for anybody that's interested in it.
What's the company?
Hostly, Hostly, and then Chicago.com. Yeah.
What are your properties are?
So mine is in Jefferson Park. My partner's is in Logan Square. Breeze is in North Center, and then I'm doing it Uptown. And I'm in talks with other property management company, even in downtown, to be able to do Airbnb in their skyrises. So I'm looking to find landlords that are wanting to do Airbnb in their units. So just like how they had one of the stats on their PowerPoint, it does cost about $10,000 to $12,000 to make a vacant unit from nothing to Airbnb ready. This is inclusive of labor, setup, buying all the furniture from, again, Amazon, IKEA, buying all the silverware plates, and so on and so forth. And that's something my firm also provides you. We set it up, we do everything for you. So it's almost like a turnkey type business where you give us the keys to your place, we'll set up for Airbnb, we'll list it for you, we'll manage the cleaning ladies, we'll manage the check-ins, check-outs, and issues in between.
So we'll open it up to questions from the audience. So just curious, just as a general rule of thumb, so between cleanings, you said you pay how much for every cleaning between every time somebody moves out and you get a new person?
It depends on the size of the unit. So I have my units, I usually charge like $100 because I know I can pay my cleaning lady $75 and I've got $25 left over for laundry or some money left over for toiletries or whatever. So I know that when you have an 8-bedroom, 8-bathroom mansion, it's going to cost a little bit more. So you either charge more or you can just factor it into your pricing. So you can just charge a little bit more every night or whatever to offset it. It's just kind of, you got to choose what you think works. And I think we've actually gone back and forth between different strategies a couple times. So.
Yeah, sure. One thing about the cleaning lady is the lower you charge is the more unreliable people you will get. So I figured out that through experience. I was initially charging, $10 an hour. And then I would go through like 3-4 different cleaning ladies. And it's the worst when you're at work and your cleaning lady doesn't show up, you start panicking, Then I started increasing my price as more revenue started coming in. So now I would say to get a reliable person, it may be $15 to $25 an hour. And it takes maybe 2 to 3 hours, sometimes 4, depending on the size of the unit to be able to clean.
A tip on the cleaning people also, mind your cleaning people, because I've had the experience where I was so low and I actually lost gas at times because I'm in another state,
Right.
100 miles away, and my gas shows up. The cleaning lady's also the person who lives in there. But then they say a place is dirty, and I'm thinking,
Oh, that would be
how is it
horrible.
dirty
Yeah,
when
right,
I just
right.
paid someone to clean it, and she assured me that she cleaned it.
Right.
So now
So you-
I took it back to the responsibility of driving that 100 miles
Right.
to go and crack my place to my
Really?
specification. that I want my guests to experience.
Right.
And recently my son's brother, just be mindful that it costs comes reliability too. Not
True.
necessarily you pay for
You-
it, get more, but you have to keep an eye on it.
Right.
How do you choose location? Why did you choose Jefferson Park? And I know you choose Bronzeville, but why did you choose a certain area in Chicago, for example, Jefferson Park?
I'm just going to interfere very quickly to tell you this. Airbnb's goal is to be in all 76 neighborhoods, and they are currently, when I left in, I don't know, January, they were in 26 neighborhoods. People think of Airbnb as your weekend getaway and party spot, right? That's only like 13% of their business. And a lot of you have heard me say this, like, a lot of people do 2 week to 2 month stays, because especially in other countries when you're traveling, you come and stay long term. Or you're doing family reunions, and you come from a neighborhood, you want to go back home, you want to host a number of people. So you pick, when I left, we had 7 active hosts in Inglewood doing very, very well at Airbnb. And so you can select wherever you like. Now let them out key in on where they're going. But Airbnb's goal, and they'll work with you to make sure they're in every neighborhood in Chicago, the suburbs, and throughout the states. They're 34,000 jurisdictions currently right now.
But why is, my dilemma is, what draws a person to a certain neighborhood in Chicago? If there's no attractions and there's nothing there, what's my mindset's thinking, it's counterintuitive. Meaning,
There's always a reason why people come. She mentioned Englewood, there's people that live there, right? This is Chicago, there's tons of people, so they have family coming to town and their family stays at your place rather than booking a hotel downtown. And you can offer that place for a fraction of the price of the hotel and make a ton of, way more money than your operating costs. So there's always a reason. The only other thing I was gonna say on that is that I've read about a lot of cities where this even makes more sense because the cost of entry is lower. You go to Indianapolis or St. Louis and you can buy a single family home for $100,000 and all of a sudden you can make similar returns that you make up here because you're competing with hotels, but now your mortgage payments or your operating costs are just lower. So trade-offs everywhere. You got to find your client.
I would look at areas where there's a shortage of hotels. You think really in Chicago, the majority of the hotels are downtown, but the rest, just like we're meeting in this VFW hall, there's not a lot of places you can meet in Chicago. I don't choose this because I like the brown paneling on the wall. This place is because this is one of the few places I can rent out that's a large space. The same is true throughout. I tried to find hotels to hold my meetings I had in Chicago. It was impossible besides downtown. So the same is true in most neighborhoods. If you don't have hotels there, there's a huge demand.
That's the point I was going to make. And so for Bronzeville, we already knew the market. We'd lived there for a few years, and so we knew Bronzeville. We liked it. It's close to McCormick. It's close to downtown and Hyde Park. And to Zach's point, you can still find deals there, or you could a year ago. It's getting harder to find deals down there. But it's so it was kind of the holistic piece of it. And there especially on the south side, like Englewood, those markets are way underserved, and there are no hotels, and so this provides that service to people, and it's obviously wanted. There's a need for it.
Can you use non-conforming units for Airbnb?
So for the regulations right now, you have to be registered. There's a number of rules that you can have there, right? It depends on whether you're doing short-term rentals, bed and breakfast, and there's a few other kind of categories you can fall in. Don't let it become like New York, right? And it's banned there for a number of reasons. It still exists and all that, but if you use a non-conforming unit, understand what your pricing model is going to be, what your complaints may be, and understand that the city is trying to regulate this heavily. And that's why, like you saw the percentage difference with Airbnb, what they get versus what the host pays, because the city has you pay as a guest almost an 8% tax to almost dissuade you from using Airbnb and to make sure that you go ahead and use these hotels.
And that's on top of the regular hotel tax.
Right, on top of the hotel tax.
Right.
So you're paying like 12% to stay in Airbnb, right? So you can use various, depending, you don't need a license. If you need a license for what you're doing, don't use a non-conforming unit because then it's going to be inspected. If you don't need a license and you simply need a registration, you can use a non-conforming unit, but understand that you're going to be reviewed on that unit and what people are looking for experience-wise.
So the guys talked about, there was a guy who had a farm in the West Loop, and he just rented it on some days to somebody else, Airbnb it. So is there anything wrong legally, or can someone do that as long as you have an option lease or option contract? Can you do that legally, and is there anything different than he should be doing versus if you own the condo and you're renting it out?
I'm gonna start by just saying that he stopped doing that about January of this year. The ordinance, I don't know that the ordinance was active when he stopped, but I'll let MK answer the rest.
So, because we're also recording this, I'm not going to give you legal advice over a microphone. But be smart. If you engage your landlord, they'll allow for it. But understand there are prohibited buildings, there are prohibited areas, and most complaints for Airbnb, they had to create a complaint line so your neighbors can call in and report you. So that's coming in 311, and they're tracking your property, the numbers of people there, the money you're making, etc. Yeah, there are restrictions in a lease about that. Two things, with your Airbnb, somebody asked about insurance earlier. Using Airbnb, you get $1 million initial coverage for your property. So if I come in, and this happened in Germany, somebody blew part of the roof off of a home. Nightmare case, right? This kind of what started it. It's covered. It's covered by Airbnb if you're meeting all their rules and regulations. If you are not, and you're skirting it, then you hope that your current property insurance covers it. If you're subleasing it like that, it does not. Opens you up to some issues. Hopefully nobody gets hurt, but that's a risk you take, right? And then sometimes some risks are acceptable, and you just have to understand your own risk tolerance. I will say there is somebody famous in Chicago who rents and does Airbnb. He rented it out for a party. His place was trashed. He only came home Sunday. And this is a normal experience. This is not simply because he is who he is. His place was completely renovated and checks cashed by Wednesday. Not cut, but cashed. Airbnb is going to step up because they don't want these situations where people's homes are being trashed. The fastest growing host market for Airbnb, those are the people opening their homes, are women 65 years old and older. And that's because a lot of times they're widowed, they own their property, they have a lot of space, they're lonely, and quite frankly, millennials like to rent those properties to stay with them because everybody else is putting out coffee or whatever else. Grandma or mom is going to make you breakfast a lot of times, right? So knowing that's their fastest growing population, they're accommodating these safety concerns for people, and they want people to feel safe in their properties, and they're creating tools for that. So hope that answers your question.
That was great. My question is, so what about, obviously in Chicago with the winters and snow removal, making sure the sidewalks, steps going up to the unit are salted and obviously shoveled? How do you guys handle that?